OnlyFans detected, opinion rejected. This phrase has become ubiquitous with the zeitgeist of young men on social media, especially on Instagram in my personal experience, but also extends to platforms like Twitter. This phrase accentuates one of the many ways that social media has driven younger and older people alike into extremism. In this example, it's majorly the debate of gender, more specifically the way that men and women have a sharp divide in terms of their behaviour, the way they tackle situations, their beliefs, morals and ethics, and how each side has become increasingly hostile towards the other in online spaces. This is a complex topic to tackle, because it's one steeped in hostility in the online sphere, and is surrounded by thousands of years of different cultures' beliefs, personal ideologies, and the constant and impossible endeavour for us to understand each other, for us to understand the opposite sex. The purpose of this video is a discussion regarding the perspective of both men and women, and how politics, ideology, and tradition affect each side's opinion on the other, and how the real enemy of the online gender debate is not the opposite sex, but something significantly more sinister. This video will explore secondly the fundamentals difference between the two sexes and the way that these differences placed within the sociological context of the last few decades has created an even sharper divide between how each side perceives the other. I will also highlight the difference physically and neurologically between the two genders to sort of establish a baseline for where this is all stemming from. Before we can get into that, however, we need to discuss something equally as important, a topic that's implications have a much farther reach than the online gender war. We are coming into a very strange point in human history. In the next few years, children born between 2018 and 2020 will be entering preschool or kindergarten. None of these children have a single memory of the world pre-pandemic, with even young children born in the 2018 range, 2 years before COVID-19, only really starting to formulate permanent memories around the time the world was completely shut down. These children's first few formative years were spent locked in the house. They couldn't leave, their only connection to the outside world was through the internet. This is something that sounds fantastic in theory. Access to infinite knowledge with a few mere taps sounds like an absolute wonder for helping younger children learn. However, based on current trends, this does not seem to be the case. In fact, young children are increasingly developmentally stunted. This does not even just apply to children born in the aforementioned time period, but even people who are in their early to mid-teens during the lockdown. This is an extremely important part of a teenager's development, and having 2 years of them being separated from real people, and their only method of communication with the outside world being social media, your perception of what people are really like is completely skewed. But why is this? Let's talk about capitalism. You've heard enough scathing critiques of capitalism. I'm not here to tell you why it's good or bad. That's not important for this discussion. What is important is what capitalism as a structure promotes, is making more money. And never stop making more money. Every year you must make more money than the previous year. You must cut costs, increase profits, anything in your power to make the numbers go up. Such is the nature of business. This is not always a moral system, however, and a perfect example of this is social media. Social media is very, very, very good at knowing what it is that you want. Sites like TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram are designed with complex algorithms to feed you exactly what you want to keep you engaged. And it's scary how good these algorithms are, to the point where TikTok is able to accurately guess what some people are thinking about at a given moment and match an advertisement or video to what thought you are having that moment. The way it does this is analyzing your behavior. Now, I won't claim to know exactly how these algorithms work. However, I will use anecdotal experience to sort of give a simplified example of how these algorithms function. I don't use TikTok much, but I use Instagram Reels a lot. Whenever I am not working, eating, showering, or playing video games, I am scrolling through Reels. I also work in hospitality, so my shifts are very all over the place. Working full-time, I will pretty much never have the same shifts 2 weeks in a row. However, every time I sit down in my car to decompress after work and I'm scrolling through Reels, I get many related to the experience of working in hospitality. The way I presume this works is Instagram uses context clues from previous Reels I've liked and comments I have left to infer I work in hospitality. And it sees that roughly around the same time windows on a given day, I am less active on the app. So between around 8:30 and 5, or between 2 PM and 10 PM, I am less active and the app infers I am working. And so when I get on my phone, it sees that I am showing more engagement for longer and assumes my shift is finished. So it shows me reels I am more likely to engage with the experience of being on a shift still fresh in my mind. Social media will also analyze trends in your behavior. If you're always liking depressing videos late at night, then it's going to keep feeding you those same videos late at night. Because humans are inherently habitual, and these sites want to meet these habits and show you content that will engage you. And we make it very easy. As I said, we are habitual. When you are scrolling through Instagram or TikTok or Reddit or Twitter, do you even make the active choice to scroll? Like, do you make the conscious effort to move your finger, or does it happen autonomously? I imagine for the majority of you, it's the latter. This is how these sites get you addicted. They get your initial hook in, and then you do all the work for them. The moment your brain stops being engaged by a piece of content, then it uses the association between a swipe and a new piece of stimulus. This is how the human brain works. Another major factor that is absolutely critical to the topic of today's discussion is how important engagement is to these algorithms. If you watch a video all the way to the end, leave a comment, a share, a like, then the algorithm is going to try its best to get you to do that again, so that you don't leave and they make more money. This is the most dangerous part of social media, and as there is one emotion above all else that is most guaranteed to drive engagement. There are many reasons that humans seek out things that make them angry. It's tied a lot to our psychology. I'll cover 6 here. Number 1 is catharsis. Catharsis is the feeling of releasing pent-up emotions. The human brain doesn't like having too much load and loves a chance to release those feelings that have been bottling up. There's a lot of ways people pursue catharsis: sport, art, reading, writing, music, exercise, social gatherings, addictions like gambling, drinking, or illicit or illegal drugs. The temporary outlet is addictive, and we will continue to seek out these things that bring us relief. Number 2 is validation of beliefs. Culture is shaped by the morals and attitudes passed along from parents to children, and the choice for the young to either embrace or reject the societal or cultural norms set by their forefathers. And people are very passionate about their beliefs and ideals. We as humans love groups. It's tied to our days as hunter-gatherers. Humans are pack hunters. We don't operate in solidarity. We haven't in hundreds of thousands of years. So we actively seek out community, and this can be seen in fandoms, online communities, and groups revolving around specific niches. And the most important thing to remember here is people will seek out the other people with similar ideological beliefs to them. So what you see in these comment sections on these posts is people with opposing beliefs forming packs, if you will, to attack those who have contrasting ideological beliefs. And we don't want to lose that sense of belonging in community. Number 3 is a sense of control. We're psychologically programmed to seek out positions where we feel in control of the situation around us, which is especially poignant right now when we are at a time in history where we have less control than ever, where we are completely at the whim of the turning cogs of society, especially in young adults, who feel like they are completely helpless and can't afford a lot of basic necessities like food, let alone pursuing their dreams, their careers, their families, home ownership, or even basic financial security. Anger is powerful in this regard, as it gives us a sense of assertiveness. When we are angry about something, we feel empowered, and that gives us a sense of control, even if we don't actually have any. Number 4 is social comparison. It's part of our nature to compare ourselves to others. We love to feel like we are superior to others, and we also hate to feel like we are inferior. This is something that's been baked into our brains over hundreds of thousands of years of hierarchical social structures. We want to be at the top of the food chain, the person with the most money, the most food, the most sexual partners. It's tied to our desire to be accepted. Those with nothing are pushed away from the communities, and those with something are embraced. This goes back to us being pack hunters. If you're the slowest runner, the weakest spear thrower, the one who collects the least berries, the one who kills the least prey, then you are thrown to the side for not contributing to the pack. Fast forward today, and we don't hunt in packs, but we still have that sense of community. And instead of hating the people who don't contribute to the pack, we hate people who ideologically differ from us. So we have this need almost to tell them that, in no uncertain terms, that they are fucking idiots. And our social beliefs are right, and theirs are wrong. And we feel that those who believe something we think is stupid are inferior to us, that they are less than us, and brainwashed and wrong, and that socially we stand superior as we have a better opinion. Look at anti-maskers, the flat earthers, the anti-vaxxers, the Holocaust deniers. These people are all objectively incorrect, but for the most part they are brainwashed by propaganda, However, they feel the same way about us, so they get angry and try to prove we are wrong, and we get angry to try and prove they are wrong. This is all a way to distance ourselves from our own flaws and shortcomings, because we are superior to other people's stupid beliefs, and we are better than them. Number 5 is attention and engagement. This one I feel is self-explanatory. We love attention. It's tied to the previously mentioned points. More attention contributes to our sense of community, allows for social bonding and cooperation. It gives us status and dominance. It makes us seem like we are valuable sexual partners. It helps us survive. Again, pack hunters. It helps us feel emotionally safe. We want people to give us attention and engage with us, and we will continue to seek out more. Finally, emotional addiction. This is the culmination of the last 5 points. We can get addicted to the adrenaline rush and the sometimes violent intensity of anger. And it's well known that addictions are scarily powerful, and we will actively seek out our vices. And emotional addictions are some of the most powerful and the most destructive, because a physical addiction will destroy your life, but an emotional addiction has the power to destroy more lives than you may realize. What was the point of me going into so much depth about the power that anger has over us? The reason I made such a big deal about anger as such a highly addictive emotion is that social media loves when you are angry. Like I mentioned, anger promotes engagement, both in the physical world and in the virtual. When we see a cute animal video on TikTok, we aren't going to write 10 paragraphs in the comments, we aren't going to send it to our friends and families to discuss how adorable it is, we aren't going to reply to hundreds of comments about how adorable Francis the cat with dwarfism is, we're just going to like and scroll. When we get angry, however, we're going to spend time consuming that media. We're going to comment, we're going to reply to other people's stupid comments, we're going to send the video to the people with the same beliefs and discuss it with them, keeping us locked onto the app. And then we see another one, we comment, we send, we see another one, we comment, we send, and it becomes a self-perpetuating cycle of seeking out videos that are going to piss us off. And we are going to make sure that everyone else knows that our opinion is right and their opinion is wrong. This is such a dangerous rabbit hole to fall down, as this addiction can lead to mental and even physical health issues. Chronic anger has been linked to cardiovascular diseases, weakened immune systems, and mental health issues like depression and anxiety. This is primarily a result of increased epinephrine, aka adrenaline. This is arguably one of our greatest strengths as a species, our flight or fight response. It's been instrumental in getting us to where we are today. However, constant exposure leads to a lot of negative health issues as time goes on. Anger is also linked to a variety of social and interpersonal problems. As could be expected, along with impaired judgment and decision-making, anger famously impairs your ability to make judgments about situations and can lead to impulsive and reckless behavior. It culminates in a cycle of escalation. When you rely on anger as your primary form of emotional catharsis, your threshold for anger decreases, leading to more frequent and more violent outbursts, not dissimilar to something like nicotine. Anyone who smoked a cigarette can confirm that your first few are usually the best. And the longer you smoke, the more nicotine your brain needs to reach that new established baseline, eventually culminating in it no longer bring you any positive feeling, only stopping the negative feeling. The last important topic to discuss in this chapter is where this cycle of addiction and anger leads, and one last key factor in this discussion. The concept of the village idiot dates back to the early agricultural age. The idea is that a community always has an idiot. They are less intelligent, more socially awkward, less skilled than his peers, and is ridiculed for his idiocy. The thing that kept the village idiot in check, however, was that there was only one. The village idiot didn't have the opportunity to spread his misguided and ignorant opinions, and he was not taken seriously by the rest of his community. What happens though, if you take all the village idiots and put them in their own village together, then you get Twitter. Jokes aside, this is an important aspect of evolving culture on the internet that is extremely important to discuss. These villages of village idiots are everywhere. However, a more appropriate term is the concept of an echo chamber. You take thousands, sometimes millions of people who are all addicted to being angry, and you put them in a subreddit or a Twitter group or a TikTok page, and they're going to keep making each other angrier. There is no rationality. There is no attempt to take a reasonable, unbiased look at the ideology you're fighting for, because why would you? You're surrounded by people who all tell you that you are right, and the nebulous they is the enemy. And if you disagree, want to be rational, reasonable, well, enjoy your downvote. You're one of them, the enemies. This even happens in communities that are designed entirely around opposing the echo chamber. It's unrelated to the particular discussion of this video, but there's a subreddit called r/gaming circle jerk. It's a fantastic example of this. It's designed to make fun of the echo chamber of the video game community and their blatant homophobia, racism, sexism, and absolutely abhorrent behaviors. But it has become a contrarian sub who will take the opposite take of the gaming echo chamber, even if for once they are right. Tangent aside, what is the point I'm attempting to make with this first chapter? You take millions of people who are all addicted to being angry, who exist in these echo chambers telling them they are right, and then put them on an app that is purposefully designed to fuel their addiction through algorithms designed to show them anything that will keep them on the app so they can make more money. And you start to see where the rampant extremism online comes from, and it's only going to get worse. The first reason is that, as I discussed around 2,500 words ago, we have a generation reaching their formative years who either are addicted to these apps already, in the case of the younger children, or already embroiled in the various discourses from spending their major developmental teenage years locked in the house where that's all they could see. The second, even scarier reason is because these algorithms are only going to get better and better, and they are going to drive more and more people towards political extremism. All of this discussion about anger, addiction, and social media is something I want you to keep as a baseline to understand what we get into next. Let's discuss some core physical, neurological, hormonal, and ideological difference between the two sexes. Women typically tend to have high levels of the estrogen hormone, and men the testosterone hormone. Hormones regulate our mood, our cognitive function, our social and sexual behavior, and our approach to risk. I'm going to vastly oversimplify the major differences between the two, but please bear in mind that hormones are still not something we are, as a species, fully understanding of. But in simplistic terms, testosterone is a hormone that not only promotes aggression and dominance, as many believe, but also accentuates existing physical and emotional features. So if you're someone who already has a lot of aggressive impulses, it's going to accentuate those impulses. It also promotes care and protection, along with promoting muscle growth. This evolutionarily was designed to give men the power to be hunters and protectors. Testosterone is also known to lead to more risk-taking behavior, how likely you are to throw yourself at danger to protect those close to you. It has also been known to assist with spatial awareness and navigation. It also promotes social behaviors, including status seeking, leadership. This is a fuzzy area for the study, and what we seem to understand right now is that high levels of testosterone in a man or woman leads them to seek out opportunities that will promote their standing in the community. Estrogen is vastly different. Physically, it promotes the growth of healthy fats around the hips and breasts, facilitating milk production, and the release of serotonin while breastfeeding. It is also a crucial part of developing the uterine tissue, assisting with the growth of children in the womb. It also promotes more traditionally maternal behaviors, such as raising children and nurturing them to grow. It has also been known to have effect on your sensitivity to oxytocin, or the love hormone, which allows you to form bonds with your children. One key difference between the two hormones is their cycle. Men typically have stable hormonal cycles, with little fluctuations, and they are usually on a daily cycle, whereas women's hormones fluctuations are usually match their menstrual cycle, which affects their mood, their behaviors, and their sexual drive on a 28-day cycle. Even during the day, the female hormones fluctuate more than a man would. When going into the day, a woman will have a heightened levels of cortisol, which slowly declines throughout the day. This can be also affected by sleep cycle and stress, which can lead to a lot of complex hormonal dips and peaks. Behaviorally, men typically seek out situations where they are in charge, in control, and doing activities. This is something that men seek a lot in relationships, along with a focus on physical affection. Women typically prefer a more intimate and emotional relationship, focusing on trust, communication. Men typically tend to excel in problem solving, with their general stronger mathematical and spatial reasoning skills, which are typically associated with problem solving. Women typically excel in areas regarding verbal and emotional intelligence, which also has its own value when it comes to problem solving. They also emphasize empathy, communication, and building consensus, working together with others to solve an issue, as opposed to men who typically prefer to solve problems on their own. Something I want to make very clear is that these trends are not deterministics. Some men excel in fields women are typically stronger, and some women excel in fields where men are stronger. I am firmly of the opinion that every person should pursue their strengths and not be confined to what's expected of your gender. If you excel in an area more than someone of the opposite sex and that's something you want to pursue, that's up to you to decide. The reason I went into these differences is to highlight why men and women throughout history have struggled to understand each other. We are wildly different in terms of how we approach systems or situations and how we communicate. This leads to a lot of men being confused by women and vice versa. A good common example used is how, when presented with an issue, men want to solve it and women typically want to communicate. I'm going to use this example of a video I saw a long time ago. A lady calls out to her husband because she needs to talk about something, and he noticed that she has a nail sticking out of her head. She talks to him about how she's experiencing really bad migraines every day. She can't sleep properly, and for some reason she keeps snagging her jumpers on her head. The whole time, the husband is trying to explain to her that the reason she's having these issues is the nail, but she keeps asking him to stop trying to help and let her talk. This is obviously an extreme and unrealistic example, but it does a good job of encapsulating how women and men approach problems differently. Women will typically prefer comfort and communication, whereas men typically really like to problem solve. I'm not implying that women are incapable of problem solving. They are very much are. I am just highlighting the differences in how the two sexes approach these issues. These fundamental differences in behaviors and approaches to situations are the main reasons you'll hear men saying something along the lines of, "I just don't understand them, they don't make sense," and vice versa. This essay so far has been setting up the fundamental differences between men and women, and how these differences are hard for us to overcome, and how social media accentuates topics and ideas that make people angry and drive engagement. So let's discuss what the actual fuck the discourse is online. Let's first talk about women. Women have typically been forced into the role of housewives up until only the last couple decades. The change began in the late 19th century and the earlier 20th century, with figures like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Alice Paul playing instrumental roles in advocating for women's rights in the United States and eventually spreading to most of the Western world. While women from a legal standpoint are equal to men, they will still have struggles as a result of geriatric dementia-ridden dinosaurs that hold major political and economic power. As a woman, you have less growth potential in a given workplace. You are also more likely to be a victim to sexual assault and harassment, with most women at some point in their life experiencing some amount of sexual harassment or assault. They also deal with outdated expectations. There is still generally an idea that's held by the older generations that women should be housewives, that they are socially pressured into not pursuing higher education or entering the workforce as they're told their job is to rear children. There is also a gross amount of medical misconduct regarding women. Women's health is severely understudied. Tools used for important procedures are wildly out of date. Medical professionals are typically significantly more likely to neglect basic testing and instead chalk any issues up to hormones or period pain. There's also the serious issue of reproductive rights, which in the United States are being revoked. Women are forced to carry rapists' babies. They are forced to die in childbirth. Some states even monitor popular period tracking apps to check for irregularity so that they can catch women getting abortions, along with encouraging people to report any abortions, an absolutely disgusting robbery of bodily autonomy. Women are also victim of 95% of domestic abuse cases, and are often powerless to escape their situations. In terms of men, men's mental health is largely ignored. As a man with depression or anxiety, your peers and even your loved ones are extremely likely to ignore or admonish your admissions of mental health issues. You'll be put down by your fellow man, your family, and lots of stories of women leaving their partners for showing vulnerabilities. This has led to the 75.6% of all deaths by suicide being men around the world, along with the male loneliness epidemic, where especially young men feel increasingly alone, excluded, and feel like they lack any form of trustworthy group. There's also severe educational disparity in developed countries. While in undeveloped countries, women are usually the ones who are deprived access to education, in the West, the educational system is heavily biased in the favor of women. The setup of having to sit down for 6 to 8 hours a day, paying attention to a teacher, is something that men who typically lean towards being kinesthetic learners really struggle with. This leads to a 20% higher dropout rate for men in secondary education, and also leads to lower acceptance rates into secondary education as establishments don't want to be labelled as discriminatory. Men also, while suffering from only 5% of domestic abuse cases, have significantly less support to fall onto. Domestic abuse reports are not taken seriously, they are ignored, and many men lose their lives each year from this. This also applies to sexual assault. Men who are sexually assaulted have no recourse, and no amount of action that will be taken in most cases. In that vein, men are significantly more likely to be labelled with false sexual assault charges. There are men who spend dozens of years in prison on an accusation that was entirely false, and the party accusing them faces no repercussion for these actions. Paternity and divorce courts are also highly skewed against men. In divorce proceedings, custody is significantly harder to get, even from abusive or negligent partners. There are also very few custody leave rights, and social expectations prevent men from taking active roles in children's lives, being socially outcasted for spending time with their children in public and being labelled as a predator, or being pressured out of pursuing teaching as a career. All that being said, let's discuss the online discourse. If you look at any online discussion regarding gender, whether it is a reel, a TikTok post, a Reddit post, or a Twitter post, you're going to see hatred flying both ways. It's become a severe problem where men will increasingly degrade women, will insult them, will diminish their struggles, especially on posts regarding women's rights. Men making comments like, "You think your period hurts, imagine what it's like to be kicked in the balls. You deserve everything bad that's happened to you because you didn't pursue a housewife role." The same is true on the inverse. Any post discussing men's rights will have women saying, "The male loneliness epidemic isn't real, you're just a loser. I'm glad you experienced these bad things. Then you finally understand what it's like to be a woman." And on and on and on. Both sides endlessly insulting the other and degrading their experiences and struggles. And it's just being fueled by these big social media conglomerates because more fighting equals more money. This discussion also highlights a big question that's being asked a lot recently, which is, why are young men typically leaning more conservative? Now, I want to make it clear, I am not someone who leans right. I am very much left-leaning. However, I perfectly understand why young men are leaning right, and this is due to something I have experienced and many other young men experience. I was once discussing with my paternal figure about an issue regarding men's rights, and he said to me verbatim, "That's good. Men need to be oppressed so that they can understand what it feels like." And this highlights exactly where the issue is, because like it or not, men and women, specifically white men and women of color are a different discussion, are pretty close to equal. I would argue women definitely have it quite a bit harder, but a young lady born in the same year as me, 2002, I would argue has a fairly close to equal chance as I do, even more in some areas. In the same way, I would probably have an advantage to them in a few areas. My own partner is a year younger than me, but has already exceeded what I've been able to do in a shorter amount of time. I am not saying women have it easy, men have it hard. That is not the argument I am trying to make. The argument I am making, however, is some chronically online young women like to act as if it's still the 1850s, and the same is true of the inverse. This leads to a shift in political leaning. I'm going to invent two alien groups, Globals and Zeepmorphs. Globals and Zeepmorphs planet is a two-party system, just like most Western nations. Now, one of the parties, Side 1, says Globals are amazing and beautiful and wonderful and Zeepmorphs are evil, and Side 2 is saying Zeepmorphs are amazing and beautiful and the Globals are evil. Obviously, Globals are going to side with, or stay with Side 1, and the Zeepmorphs are going to stay with Side 2, because this made-up alien race is the same as humans. We like to be in a community where we feel like we belong. Now there's this new app called Zeblorg, which is basically alien TikTok, and it's feeding Side 1 and Side 2 propaganda to Globals and Zeepmorphs respectively. And obviously both sides hate each other, so they're going to keep consuming this propaganda. and the divide is going to grow and grow and grow. Do you see where I'm coming from? Young men aren't going to vouch for the side that tells them that they are evil. That they are oppressors and deserve to be oppressed. There are these videos on TikTok where women will absolutely degrade the men's mental health movement, for example. Why should I care about your mental health? It's your own fault. You have it so easy and you still complain. I refuse to be upset for people who already get more than what they deserve. And that last one's a big one. There's a lot of especially older men who have significantly more than what they deserve to an almost insane degree. Old men are still dictating global policy to this day. Out-of-touch rich people are running our countries and our businesses, and they are using that power to reinforce the values that they were taught, and I am all for getting rid of them. There's also the problem of generational wealth transfers, where a small percentage of men who are raised with outdated ideals are going to be inheriting these companies in the next 10 years. And these old farts in Parliament will be replaced with new old farts once the old ones die out. But in terms of young people, the majority of users of social media, they're going to side with whichever side tells them that they matter, that their opinions matter, and that they have intrinsic value. A POC woman is not going to lean right because as far as the right is concerned, she should lose her rights and go back to being a slave. And the left tells her that she is her own autonomous person with rights who deserves a community and respect. People are always going to side with people who like them. And as I said before, social media is just going to fuel this. If you as a young white man keep seeing videos after video saying you're amazing and women and minorities are evil, and you keep seeing videos of unrealistic expectations about your wealth, your penis size, your height, your build, women abusing their husbands, men losing paternal rights, men being sexually abused, ridiculed and ignored, of course you're going to side with that. As a woman, if you keep seeing videos of men degrading women, forcing them into housewives roles, beating their wives, sexually assaulting, you're going to side with whatever side is against that. I'm making these points as someone who leans more left, as I think the conservative way of thinking is outdated and archaic. And I think women and men should have equal opportunities. I think that everyone should have equal opportunities. Everyone should have bodily autonomy. I think that everyone should be equal and make the most of the life that they have before them. And the point I'm trying to make here is that if we want to bring young men over from the right, telling them that they are evil is not the way to go about it. And as young men, we need to be more understanding of women, of their issues, their struggles, and we need to be accepting of them, and we need to encourage their desire to pursue what it is that makes them happy. And this leads to the final part. OnlyFans detected, opinion rejected. This phrase has been cycling around social media for a while now. It's used on videos of risque influencers making seemingly innocuous posts or videos trying to lure vulnerable young men to purchase pictures of their body. I am firmly under the opinion that sex work is work. If that is the role you want to pursue, then you should be allowed to. There are a lot of valid reasons to pursue sex work and to consume it. However, I do find a lot of creators to be very predatory, and I do find the system to be predatory as well. Famous Dr. Phil guest Danielle Bregoli was famous for releasing an OnlyFans the very second she turned 18. Young women online feel they are pressured to sell their body to make enough money to put food on the table, and it's not subtle either. There will be people online replying to these comments saying things like, "Why did you immediately check? You're a creep." Comments of these natures, and will claim that it's not fair to post comments ridiculing women for using OnlyFans on innocuous content. But I personally feel like some people are taking the sex work is work idea too far, where they will blindly defend sex workers and claim these young men are the problem for checking, when in reality it's fairly obvious when creators are luring young men into paying for their nudes, risque poses, risque clothes, captions that target people who are typically not very sexually active, namely obese men, introverted men, people who are more likely to be deprived of physical connection and trying to exploit that to give them money. This is also a major clash ideologically. Most young men are leaning conservative, as we mentioned before, more than ever, and find that young women selling their naked body as disgusting. They find the idea of having sex with a woman who's not a virgin disgusting because she's used goods, as they say, whereas young women are happy that finally have the autonomy to be able to make their own decisions with their body. And if they want to sell it, they can. And if they don't have to. But this phrase, OnlyFans detected, opinion rejected, I believe marks the current culmination of the current gender war zeitgeist. It's one side believing that it's the epitome of evil, and the other side believing it's a fantastic opportunity for previously marginalized communities. And it's the perfect example of how the sharp divide between the two sexes online. It represents in totality the ideological differences between the two groups and highlights how dangerous it is for both sides, where one side is heavily leaning towards, we want women who are modest, who don't sleep around, who stay pure for us, and the other side saying, we don't have to be like that for you. Shifting such ingrained ideologies is not an easy task. It takes generations to weed out beliefs like these, but the biggest step you can take is to just go outside. I'm not kidding. You'll be amazed what you can discover when you just go out and meet real people. Yes, some will be bad. I have met plenty of bad people, but I've also met a lot of good people, and it's very hard to generalize when people are typically fairly nice. People online just are hateful and hide behind the face of anonymity. I very nearly fell down the incel rabbit hole. I had a bad experience with someone I thought cared about me, and it sent me down a bitter and angry path that very nearly led to my suicide. And social media was a big part of this. My chronic use of Twitter, Reddit, Instagram fed this idea that women are evil and narcissistic and unrealistic and I'll die alone. And then I went outside. I hopped on a train. I got off at a random stop and I walked. I found a nice park and I sat and I watched the ducks. I sat there for 2 hours thinking. And I did the same thing the next day and the next day and the next day. And I thought, and I came to terms with what had happened. And I thought about myself, my experiences, and how they led me to where I was. 2 weeks later, I met the woman who would eventually become my partner, and our 1-year anniversary is in 2 weeks as of writing the script. My mental health was still in shambles, but it's gotten better. It's still not great, but I understand better now what drove me down that path was the plague of social media. It's only going to get worse with Gen Beta coming next year, with most of Gen Alpha only knowing a post-COVID world. These big conglomerates want us fighting. They want these kids to be chronically online. They want us to be divided because it means that we attack each other and not the megacorps brainwashing us into hating each other. Men and women are perfect matches for each other. Our strengths cover each other's weaknesses. We are supposed to be a team. Hell, not even just men and women, men and men, women and women. We need to find people whose strengths match our weaknesses. We won't get anywhere from hating each other. We need to work together to make life better for everyone. We need to work to stop the domestic violence, the rape, the medical malpractice. We need to stop the loneliness, the suicide, and the stigma. We're all having kids soon, our generation. Let's not raise them like our parents raised us. Let's be better. Thank you very much for watching, and have a fantastic rest of your day. I've never made a video like this before. I'm currently sitting here after finishing 17 pages of script, and it's 12:48 AM. I want to clarify a few things. First, a lot of my notes came from ChatGPT. Nothing in the script was copied from ChatGPT, but I did use it for my notes. And it's notorious for sometimes being wrong, so if I'd said something untrue, please let me know. This video also unintentionally skewered a little bit towards the male side of the argument. This was something I tried to avoid, but it's hard. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I've never been one. I'm just going off of experience I've seen from having a lot of female friends growing up. I want to acknowledge and say thank you for the support on the channel. It's been amazing. I know this is such a sharp departure from what I usually post, but it's a topic I have a lot to say about and I wanted to provide my 2 cents. If you enjoy this, please let me know so I can make more videos like it. Again, the support has been amazing recently. It sounds cliche, but you genuinely cannot know how much it means to me that people have been enjoying my content. I have worked really hard on it, and I'm glad I'm able to share these videos with the world. I'm glad I can help people. It makes me happy when someone comments on one of my dumb shits guides being like, it's finally helped me understand this more. Thank you so much. I absolutely love absorbing knowledge, and I absolutely love sharing knowledge, and it warms my heart, all the support I've been receiving. Now, fingers crossed, this video hits the right algorithm.